Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Gers, and Purrs. My name is Leslie. It's October, so I'm trying to just give you a cozy ambiance in my office. We're going to be discussing two books. Each one is by a different author. The first one might be my favorite book for the month and a contender for a top spot for the entire year. It was just so good. And that's Alicia Elliott's debut fiction novel, And Then She Fell. Before I discuss the plot, I just wanted to point out what I love so much about this book. This is a complete genre bender. It's part literary fiction, horror, science fiction. It just really blew me away. I think I might actually read a little bit of the inside because I have a feeling I'm going to go off on some tangents. And I just don't want to ruin this if you haven't read it just yet. So on the sleeve it says, on the surface, Alice is exactly where she should be. She's just given birth to a beautiful baby girl, Dawn. Her charming husband, Steve, a white academic whose area of study is conveniently her own Mohawk culture, is nothing but supportive. And they've moved into a new home in a posh Toronto neighborhood. But Alice could not feel like more of an imposter. She isn't connecting with her daughter, a struggle made even more difficult by the loss of her mother, and every waking moment is spent hiding her despair from Steve and their ever watchful neighbors. I don't want to read the whole thing. I just kind of wanted to set the tone, give you the plot. What this author does so well is discuss what happens to a woman postpartum. Every woman's experience is different. I related to quite a bit of this. When you're reading the story, you find yourself wondering, is this something that's going on with her that's postpartum? Is this symptoms of mental health, struggle that the main character should seek help for, or is something else going on that I'm trying to figure out the right words to put culturally, because the main character is indigenous, and that gets explored, and that's why I'm also bringing that in as a possibility, because of the way that the narrative is written. Something that's also well crafted is the micro and macro aggressions that the character has to deal with. There are just so many instances that just felt very real, and actually also reflected a couple of things that have been in the news. Going back to the postpartum, I just don't think I've read a book in particular that describes the struggle put against what society expects the experience should be for a mother. And so I really just delighted in the author discussing those struggles, because I just deeply feel that just because a mother struggles to connect, or if they have a depression or the baby blues or whatever, it doesn't mean that they don't care for their child. It's just a struggle that goes on, and I just feel like there's so much of a stigma to that. And so I really, really love how the author captured that. Something that really made my heart clench at times is that the character's husband is an academic. He is in anthropology, and that just made me clench. I think that what she explores through that character is the idea that someone could intellectualize equality. I'll just say that. Someone could intellectualize equality. They could intellectualize what they think that they understand. And it's very different when they are actually faced with real life situations. And it could be very dangerous for someone to think that because they have some sort of knowledge that they're almost like above doing the work in a way. I hope I'm making sense when I say that. All right, I had to look at my notes for a section because I didn't want to mess this up. The main character's name is Alice. And when I was reading this book, I don't know if it was intentional or not, or if I'm just making a connection that really I'm going too far, but I felt like it reminded me a little bit of, or maybe felt like a nod to Alice in Wonderland in a way. The author's name is Alicia, and so maybe that's why she changed the name to Alice, because I did read an article from the author, and there's definitely some connections between what she's been through in her life and what the character goes through. Going back to the husband, I thought I really appreciated that what she's also creating is someone that is nice. Sometimes when people discuss or give examples of, let's say, someone not really being there for you, someone hurting you, someone quite possibly and passively reinforcing discrimination in a way. There's this, someone could very easily create like a two-dimensional villain, but she very specifically writes someone that's a nice man, and I thought that was just so important. And it really speaks to how anyone is has a possibility of going against their ideals without even really possibly acknowledging it, and kind of leads to the conversation about how people just need to constantly be vigilant and do the work to better themselves when it comes to those topics. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I really enjoyed that too. Going back to the idea of Alice in Wonderland, something that this character is confronted with is that she speaks to Pocahontas, but in the book it's at the beginning when you're talking to this person that she starts speaking to, that lends for a conversation about like Indigenous, Native American representation on other forms of medium, right? Most famously the Disney movie, and kind of goes on from there, and also kind of branches off to how the patriarchy and how a person, I guess in terms of gender dynamics, can really be harmful to women, if that makes any sense. But yeah, there is so much going on in this book, but I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm concerned I might step into like a spoiler territory. I would just say pick this up. I love that I read it. I'm so glad. Lastly, I will say by the end of the book, I found myself really teary-eyed. It had nothing to do with feeling sad or anything like that. It was actually just coming from a place of the abundance of love, an appreciation for the characters and the love that the characters hold for each other. yeah, there's so many characters that are like complicated, and the fact that the author still holds so much love for them. Oh, here's one other thing. I keep thinking about more things. I do also appreciate the conversation, going back to mental health, about how mental health is handled, especially for this character that's Indigenous, and I guess how should I say this, non-Indigenous Western medicine handles that topic, and it can be very harmful. So at least that's what I thought the author was saying. Anyways, I'll stop gushing about this book because I'll just keep going on and on. But I really loved it. I'm not going to share a quote just yet because there is one that I loved so, so much that made me teary-eyed. But I don't want it to allude to what happens more in the book. So I'm going to have to comb through this before I pick something. So maybe I'll pick something during the wrap-up. Maybe I'll do that. So yeah, the next book that I actually didn't make as many notes as I should have because I zipped through it so quickly was A White Horse by Erika T. Wurth. I'm trying to remember who brought this up. Someone on Instagram brought this up. And I can't think of their name, but if I could think of their handle, I'm picturing them right now and I can't think. Then I'll put it below in the details section. I'll just read you a little bit of the beginning. Heavy metal, ripped jeans, Stephen King novels, and the occasional beer at the White Horse has defined urban Indian Kari James' life for so far. But when her cousin Debbie finds an old family bracelet that once belonged to Carrie's mother, it inadvertently calls up both her mother's ghost and a monstrous entity, and Carrie's willful ignorance about her past is no longer sustainable. All right, everyone, I had to look at my notes for a second because I didn't think I'd remember. I zipped through this book. I did enjoy it. I do have an issue with it, and that's the fact that there's a movie when I saw when I was really young. I think it's called Stir of Echoes, and it's with Kevin Bacon. And when I was reading this, I just kept thinking about that movie. So, and I just felt like it was too similar, if I remember correctly. I could be remembering the movie wrong, but I guess the premise just seems so similar to me. This book has like this heavy metal punk rock sensibility right away within the first sentence. In the synopsis, Stephen King is brought up, which is actually one of the issues that I have in this book. I'm all for reading books and they may have a nod or a reference to pop culture, other authors, that kind of thing. My issue is that there were so many references to Stephen King, it almost felt like too much. And I wish that the author had done that less. I'll just say that. I didn't find this book very scary. This read more like crime fiction. And even though this book deals with very real issues, I'd have to say that, yeah, it didn't really speak to me as a horror. But again, I haven't even looked up what this is considered, if this is considered horror or more like a fiction thriller. I don't know. So a big major point that I really did love about this book that didn't necessarily have to do with like, oh, how do I say this? The crime at hand is how the main character and other characters bring up the nuances of identity. I just really appreciated that. I'd have to say Mexican identity comes up quite a bit in here. I'm Mexican American, and I don't know, I think I found myself like drawn to that. So I don't know if I'm a little bit biased, but I like the idea that when people are discussing identity, there's also these layers of nuance and complex conversations, not just about Indigenous identity and what that means, but other people's cultures. Yeah, I don't want to say too much, but I really, really felt very touched by those conversations. And that was really a standout section throughout, or a standout topic, I should say, throughout the book. It just felt like a little sprinkle of like a social commentary, if you will. And so I did like this, but it didn't give me necessarily like the horror feel that I've been looking for, which is odd because I am sometimes a little bit of a chicken when it comes to horror. It's very odd, the things that scare me, the things that don't, the things I can handle, and the things that I can't. Yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say about this book. So I did like it. I think I would still recommend it, but if you are expecting like the straight up horror, that's not what this book is. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe I felt like it was marketed as horror, and that's not really what I got. Still very enjoyable though. Alright, so I'm so glad that somehow I've been like really blowing through a bunch of books this month that I was not expecting. I thought I was just going to be reading The Garlic and the Witch and The Garlic and the Vampire and be done with it for the month because I've been incredibly busy. But I've just had this like, I don't know, ferocious appetite for reading all of a sudden, and I'm just going with it. If you're new here, thanks for coming by. I hope you stay. If you're a continuing subscriber, thank you for sticking around. I really, really appreciate you. Sending lots of love your way this October. Subscribe, like, comment below. Let me know if there's any books that you think I'd be interested in reading, or if you think I should push myself more outside of my comfort zone when it comes to horror, and what would your recommendations be? Alright everyone, I'll talk to you later.